Okay, I'm just going to show you how to make these masks. I've had a bunch of people asking since my husband posted that I was making them. And if you have elastic, it's awesome. There's a different way I can show you. But I'm going to assume that you don't have it because it's really almost impossible to find. So what you have to do then is make your own string out of fabric. So first what you do is you take a piece of fabric. You actually want an 12 by 9 piece, and you're going to end up folding that in half. Now I have this piece of interfacing on here. Some fabrics are not thick enough, and you can test that by folding it in half and holding it up to your face, trying to blow out a candle. If you can blow out the candle, then it's not thick enough, and you need either interfacing or possibly another layer of fabric will do. You have to just test until you can't blow out a candle. So anyway, you have your 12 by 9 piece of fabric. If you don't have one big, you can use 2 9 by 6s. This is just quicker to make because you don't have to cut another piece. So anyway, you have that. So you want to prepare as many of those as you need. And then for your strips, you're going to want to take fabric and make long strips 2 inches wide and just make a whole bunch of those. What you do with these then, in order to make these longer strips, is you're going to sew them together. So you're going to take them and hold them like this, pin them down. Just one pin is probably good. And then you're going to sew them across diagonally down here. What that does is that gives you a continuous strip, and then you're going to end up with something that looks like that. You can trim the back a little bit, trim the back and the threads, and then you end up with as long as you want, as long as you want to sew. If you do this option, just make sure that when you are connecting them, that you do them all the same sides, so that you have them all, like all the bad sides should be facing down and all the good sides facing up in your whole strip. Just make sure you do that. I started to make that mistake, had to take some out. So anyway, once you do that, you end up with a really long strip. And then what you do is you're going to want to cut it 29 inches. And that's going to be your side, and you're going to need 2 of these 29-inch long things for each mask. If you happen to be able to find it, you can buy, this is just a little remnant, but this is called binding or bias tape, or binding, and it's basically what we're making, but it's already made, so it's a little bit easier, a lot easier and quicker. But I also haven't been able to find that in the stores either. But if you can find really thin bias tape, this is probably 1/2 inch. This would be ideal. It just save you time. So anyway, once you have your 2 29-inch strips, you have your piece. What you're going to do next is you're going to sew down this edge just one time. And then you're going to actually make sure you do that. If you have wrong sides, you do it wrong sides out. So most of the time you probably won't matter because it should be reversible. But let's say I just sew this, and then if that's the case, I'm going to just turn it inside out. So just pretend like I just sewed it. I have one strip here. The next thing that I'm going to do is actually I've been adding, and you can, this is optional, but I've been adding, try to see if you can see it, a little piece here. You can kind of see my little rectangle, and inside here is actually a little clip that allows you to, make that against your nose fit a little bit better. And the way you make these, it's really easy. You just take a paper clip, open it up, and you just straighten it out. And then it doesn't be perfectly straight, but what you do then is you end up just folding it down. Now I have a little tool, a jewelry making tool that makes it really easy, but you can just use your hands or pliers. This I just fold down a little tiny bit, and then you have your little thing. So that's that. So you might want to just make all that you need at the beginning. So once you have your little piece here that's sewn at the bottom, you're going to insert this. So you take one of these and you're going to just put it inside and just kind of center it and feel where it is. Maybe straighten it out a little bit. And then I've been just picking a place on the fabric visually to sort of mark where I want it to be. And then you're just sewing a little box to box it in. So that's optional. I was doing it because I felt like it made it fit better. Once you have that in, you are ready to do your pleating and stitching it together. What you're going to do is you're going to have 3 pleats. You can see this one has 3 pleats in it, and they're about a 1/2 inch-ish, but I've just been folding it down, and then I've been just kind of looking. It's maybe a 1/2 inch or less. Then what you do is you just pin it. I'll just do one side, but I was kind of doing both sides at the same time, like doing one pleat and then another, but for time's sake, I'll just show you one side. And then you just kind of do them right in a row. So I've been sort of making it so that they're, you want them to be like pretty continuous. They kind of, this one touches the bottom of that one. And then you just do that again at the bottom. If they're not, they can be small. It doesn't really matter. You need to do, sometimes at the end you need to do a smaller one. So what you'll end up with is this on both sides. And then you're gonna take your binding strip. And I was measuring about 14.5 inches from the top. I was putting it to the top of my mask. That way, oh my gosh, you kids, that. Sorry, it's on the video, oh well. I was measuring 14 inches from, or about 14.5 inches from the top of my binding to the top of my mask, and then I was putting it together. And then what you do for that is you just fold this over and you're going to pin it in place, and then you're going to sew. And I just realized I forgot to show you how to make the rest of the rest of these. So let me just go backtrack a little bit. So anyway, once you you just sew along here. I've been double stitching right here, like going back and just doing one additional stitch, because I felt like some of these I know are going to be heavily used, so I just wanted to make sure they weren't going to fall apart, that they'd stand up. So anyway, once you're making, I forgot to show you this, you have these sewn together. We talked about doing this little crisscross sewing here. You end up with a very long strip, and you're cutting it into 29 inches. You have that. You have to iron it. And so I was just clearing my ironing board out. And what you're going to do is you're going to fold it like that. There's no real measurement. And then you're going to iron it. And I've just been doing like as long as my ironing board will allow. And then I go back on that same strip and I'm going to fold it again. And I'm going to iron it. Now I do leave one side a little lower than the other because it just helps me be able to see when I'm sewing that I'm getting both the front and back. and then you just sew when you sew right on the other edge of this top side. So that's how you make the binding. I usually just do I spend like an hour doing a whole bunch of that and then cutting it into the 29-inch strips. If you have elastic, you can save a little bit of time. I think this is literally my last bit of elastic. I'll just walk you through real quick. If you happen to have elastic or something that can sub for elastic, it's actually better if you have the two pieces instead of the one. So it's a little bit easier if you have 2 pieces of 6 by 9 instead of the 12 by 9. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna put them the wrong sides out, which doesn't matter in this case. And you're gonna leave a hole blank so that you can turn it inside out, but you're gonna sew around, and when you get to the corners, you're gonna place a piece of elastic right inside, and you're gonna sew, usually back stitching a little bit, you're gonna sew there, sew down to here, and then when you get down to here, you're gonna insert the other half of your elastic, and then you're gonna do that all the way around, except for you're leaving a hole here, because then you're gonna turn it inside out. And when you do that, you end up with a piece like this that you can iron out, and then you have you do have a hole at the bottom. So what I've been doing then is stitching this just with a straight stitch around all the way around, and then doing my my layers like we just talked about. So on this version, you end up with kind of a, it's a finished edge, but you can see all your pleats on the edge, and then you have your mask which has elastic. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to help you with that, but good luck getting fabric. Joann's has had a line for days and days. So you can use sheets if they're thick enough, curtains, old pants, not really t-shirts, they're too stretchy and aren't thick enough, but you can use a lot of different materials that you might have already around the house, or ask your neighbors if you don't want to go to the store, which I really don't want to go to the store if at all possible. So anyway, hope it works out for you. If you need anything, let me know.